And I believe we are no longer muted. No, we are no longer muted. We're live and stuff.
That is a true story. I hear you. I hear you on YouTube. So yeah, we are no longer muted. Now you're muted on YouTube.
Does my voice sound better? Oh.
It's the dulcet tones of Hapa fodder.
Somebody else said that in chat today, and I was like, I'm not even sure if I take that as like a
Oh,
positive
it's good,
thing
man.
or...
It's like the dulcet. I think dulcet's calming. Right? Isn't that what that means? It didn't take us long to hit a road bump. Dulcet definition.
So,
That was quick.
for those of you
Pleasing to
watching
the
at home,
ear. Yeah, is dulcet means pleasing to the ear, melodious, having a soothing, agreeable quality, and apparently sweet to the taste is the third. I didn't know that one.
I'm
It gets
still not
weird
sure.
on the third
Yeah,
definition.
yeah, still not sure how I feel about that. That's
Oh,
yeah,
didn't
well,
see that one coming.
yeah. Well, hello everybody. By the way, cheers to all of you out there in YouTube land.
I'm 7. This guy's Hapa.
You wanna
Point
introduce
the wrong way.
yourself properly? Talk about yourself at all? I
Yeah,
mean,
sure, we
everybody
can do
knows
that.
you already. You're the famous guy, so
Yeah, right. Like it's kind of well known. I have to hide. This is where I hide.
you wear your
Um,
fake Italian mustache and out in public.
I wonder if that would work. Little
You have to
twirly.
have a little twirl.
Yeah, so I'm 7. We talked about things we might say, things we might not say, but I will give you kind of the overview that I give generally if I'm streaming or doing other things. Um, I'm a tech executive in the real world. I've played baseball in the past. I raced cars at one point very poorly. Was much better at building them than I was at driving them. Play a lot of video games. Love to hang out on Twitch and hang out with guys like this guy, this Hapa Fodder guy. Into obviously audio equipment. I've been a musician for many years. Hopefully soon will be again. The pandemic put a little bit of a stop to that. Do a lot of studio work, a lot of work on stage, but haven't done much in the past, 2.5, 3 years. So hopefully we'll be back on that soon, and this stuff will be more than a prop and a paperweight. So that's kind of me. Happy. What
Pretty
about you, man?
giant paperweight, man.
Yeah, it's a good paperweight. It does hold paper down.
It does hold paper down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Hapa Fodder. Obviously, those of you that know us from streaming, you kind of know our names. But Hapa is a screen name that I've been known by for, or a nickname, I should say. I've been known for years because when I was in Hawaii, I used to go to this particular diner on the North Shore all the time, and the old lady that ran the diner used to call me Hapa Haole Boy because she knew I was half Japanese and I was a haole because I'm a mainlander, as they say on the islands, and it just kind of stuck. Almost 22 years in the Navy. Was blessed enough to put myself in a situation that when I retired, I didn't necessarily need to actually get an adult job like many of you have. I'm still trying to figure out what that means, like an adult job, because even when I had an adult job, I don't feel like I had an adult job.
I
So
think
I've
that
always
requires
been.
you're an adult.
Is that what that is? I Yeah,
I
definitely
think
don't
it
fit
does.
the I don't fit the mold. But yeah, I mean, really laid back, easygoing. I try to keep things low key. Try to stay as positive as possible with all the craziness in the world, especially right now. I mean, I feel like every year we're saying that, especially right now, unfortunately.
In these unprecedented times,
Right, and every year it's at
every
unprecedented
day
times. It's
is
like,
unprecedented.
but yeah, pretty simple.
So,
So we have some bullet points that we are gonna
well,
go
before we
off
do that,
of.
I think you
Yeah.
did a cool thing there where you, and I didn't know where your name had come from, so that was new to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
thanks for sharing. Yeah, I had no idea, right? I had not heard that, so it's
Oh, I
probably
thought
worth
I told you
mentioning.
that before.
No, people ask me where mine comes from all the time, and some of our friends make fun of me for my name, which I think is really fantastic of them. It makes me feel very good about myself. It makes me not cry myself to sleep every night. But it actually comes from the race car I used to race, and
Oh wow.
the race car I used to race, yeah, it was a 1993 Mazda RX-7, which is a rotary engine car, and the designation for that car is the FD3S. And so that's where the S3 comes from, right? It was the FD3S. And of course, how do you turn that into 7, right? Because it's an RX-7. So
Right.
that is how far
Wow.
back that name goes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Not a lot of people know that,
That's
just,
a
I
very
think they take it for
nerd way to
granted.
come around your screen name, man.
Well, and you're talking about the car was a 93, so this had to be what, 95, right? 94, 95. So
Damn.
yeah, that name's been around a while. So yeah, I like that you did the introduction on your name. I had not heard that. It's kind of a cool name source that you got there.
Yeah, I've been known by Hapa. I mean, people used to call me that when I was in the Navy. So it's like wasn't uncommon for me to be on a ship somewhere and someone would yell Hapa down a P-way, right, a hallway on the ship, and I would be like, "What?" Turn around. Like, so I actually didn't go by my first name for a long time as a result of that. So it just kind of stuck with the gaming side of the house too, which I honestly, I mean, I think it was 16, 17 years I've had that nickname kind of, so it was pretty legit for me when I was lucky enough to get into the game industry to just keep that going. So, but
Well, and, you know, that's to me that's really cool. Because some people have these names that came from like a
yeah.
cool place, and I feel like a little bit of a dork sometimes because mine came from a car. But we've all got those. I think it's interesting. Like we all have those sources that the names came from, and probably worth Hapa. It's probably worth mentioning how you and I met. So we are both North America community contributors for World of Warships. Something we actually both care deeply about is that game and the community around that game. However, this area, this place, this thing that we're doing here, while it will include us, we may talk about that game and things adjacent to that game, and there will absolutely be people from that community who are involved in this.
Yeah.
That is not what this is about, right? And so you and I decided, as a segue, we'll talk about why are we doing this, right? But we decided there's an area we would sit down and have conversations. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, and let's run through this because we don't vet, we don't vet anything, right? But
Come
definitely not
on.
these conversations. But there was a moment when you, me, and actually several other people, and it was really kind of centered by SoNMG, right? And we were talking about Saturday
Yep.
mornings,
Yep.
having a group of people that got together. And in that game, you can only have a division of 3 people. So only 3 people could actually play the game. But there were times when 5 or 6 of us were hanging out. And those
Yeah.
conversations were some of while the game was fun, the conversations is what that time became to be about. And
Yeah.
we kind of started talking around that about what if we did that absent the game, and would it work? And so I'd love to hear your take, and now we can go back and forth on that about what's your purposes, like why are we doing this? What's in your mind about it?
I mean, a big part of it for me when I originally I love people. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's a love hate relationship. I love hate people, right? Because people are often surprised to find out I'm a very introverted person. Like I am not an extrovert by nature, but because of the job that I had when I was in the Navy, being a chief, and for quite a while I was an instructor, so I used to teach a lot of large classes, 75 plus people. It the military, you don't have a choice to do this or that, or you choose not to do this because you're not comfortable. Like that's not a thing, right? So I was forced to find my way into being an extrovert. So you'll often hear me, and I talk about it, everywhere. But I'm an introverted extrovert. Like if I
Hmm.
have a choice between going out on a night out of town or sitting at a lounge with a bunch of friends drinking and chatting, I'll choose sitting at the lounge drinking and chatting because I can't stand large groups of people. Anxiety kicks up, things like that. But I love learning about new people, meeting new people. I love one of the things with my travels around the world. It taught me to have a appreciation for where people come from and where how they think about things and their upbringing and so on and so forth. Um, and so as a result of that, I found that I love talking to people, which streaming online is like the perfect avenue because I don't necessarily have to be in a room with said people, but I could be online and chatting. And one of the things we talked about, and for those of you that follow us in World of Warships, Lord Zath, Sea Raptor, Deacon, Seven, obviously, Sown. We all kind of mesh personality wise. We have good back and forths when we chat, and that was one of the things we had no way to figure out how to make it work because like you said the game only allows for 3 in a division, but we would have 5 6 of us in a voice channel call together and we're just BSing, right? Just nothing specifically laid out in stone. We may have a topic that we just happen to be talking about at the time. And I remember at the time I just mentioned like we should be doing this as like a call. Like why not? People like listening to us here as chat and stuff like that. So why not do it as a group? And unfortunately, everyone's schedules kind of conflicted. So I think you and I have been talking about doing this for
Since that time.
7 8 months.
Yeah, yeah, like, since that time, because that was a very unscripted time, right?
Hundred
And
percent.
some amazing conversations came out of it, but it was very unpredictable,
Yeah.
and what's magic about those times is like when those is unscripted, you get some really kind of authentic moments, and there's
Sure.
obviously if someone if someone's involved, it's going to be hilarious, and
Yeah.
there's all these moments that are going to occur. But we began to talk then, right, about what if we did sit down and had some more scripted stuff. And so this is really the outcome of 6 months of you putting up with my crazy schedule to try and figure out, and it really had, like, anybody who's watching or listening, like, the patience that this guy has shown to be
I
able to
think
get to
he
this point.
I think Seven and I have literally dinged each other throughout the last 6 months with what do you think about this week? Sure, I'm free, and then it just didn't happen. And then the next week.
And there was, like, in that time, I've been to, like, San Francisco twice. I've been traveling and stuff. Those were the only weeks I actually said no to, right? Everything
Yeah. Yeah,
else I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sure," and
Yeah.
then didn't do it.
Yeah.
You hit something kind of interesting, I thought, which was introversion, right? Is I wanna Can we mind digging on that for a minute? Because
Yeah, no,
I'm in the
100%.
same boat, right? And there's, people there's a term out there that people use, which is ambivert, right? Which is
Hmm.
you're not an introvert, you're not extroverted. I'm an introvert as well. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, how do I not be less of that, but be more comfortable not always being that, I think is what I was
Right.
shooting for.
Yeah.
And music became like a really good way for me to have to overcome some of that, just kind of my natural tendency to just
Right.
honestly shell up in the house, right?
Yeah.
And watch Netflix and chill until I'm 96 and life is over, right? So if that wasn't reasonable, what was, right? So I started playing in
Yeah.
bands, and you kind of force yourself out of that comfort zone. But at the end of the day, your real refresh is going to be hanging out, right, with a couple of people you may actually want to
Yep.
hang out with, and you feel safe, like having conversations and no judgment, all that stuff. And so I'll kind of, I'll second that for why, I think this is a cool thing I wanted to participate in. I wanted to see if we could do something scripted. I wanted to see if we could carry conversations. We know we can. We've had so many of them. But I also, wanted to see if there was a creative social outlet, right, that wasn't as demanding as loading up,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
amount of gear. This is about half of my gear.
Yeah.
Like if I'm on a stage,
Jesus.
so like but somebody's got to load it up and move it, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, that seems like an awful lot of work to like just have a conversation with somebody. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited to see how this goes and see, how it works out. And honestly, thank you for your patience getting us to this point. And at the end of the day, it's really just an excuse for us to have a whiskey together.
To be honest with you, I mean that was the thing. It's weird because this format to me is amazing, but it's also a little bit of anxiety for me because I'm a very regimented, like I have to have, you know, but at the same time when you even said it, like you and I have had countless conversations where it just flowed fine and I wasn't worried about that. And that's the thing too is I would love to see us eventually get to a point where we have, the 5 or 6 people together. We just got to get that
Yeah.
format down, the regiment down, and figure out what works and what doesn't, etc., etc. So, but yeah,
Let's,
I'm
we
excited.
got a, oh, I am too. We got a couple more minutes for this kind
Yeah,
of segment. Why don't we talk about, I get asked a lot about what's here. You get asked a lot about, and I'm going to point the wrong direction, but
no, that's the
there.
right direction.
Is it? Okay, so you
Yeah,
get asked a lot about what's behind you as well.
yeah,
Why don't we give, and I do owe at least my Twitch community, I actually owe them a tour of this thing because I had to rebuild it from the ground up, as you know, recently.
yeah.
So I owe them a tour, but I wouldn't mind knowing like the stuff that's behind you, and I can run through some of this stuff as well so that people can know
Sure,
at least what's sitting behind us.
sure. You want me to go first, or?
Yeah, at first I want to know about the helmet.
So, I mean, that's just with me in terms of streaming. I've always had with my streaming setup. a whole lot of nerdum, just straight nerdness back here. A lot of gaming stuff. Like there's a figurine right here that's The Witcher. That's actually a very heavy figurine. That thing's I think 16 inches tall, but it's like a good.
That's Geralt from the
Yes,
Witcher, like
that's
in
actually a Ronin Geralt. So it's kind of a mesh melt of reality, which I'm half Japanese, so like the Ronin samurai thing really
yeah.
plays in with
Now,
me.
is that as a fan of the game or a fan of the show or both?
Both. To be honest with you, I
Okay.
love the games. The games are what.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me backtrack. Those games I enjoy watching people play more than I do enjoy playing. You know what I mean? Like,
Gotcha.
for me, you know, a lot of the games and stuff I watch on Twitch are a lot of games that I don't even play. So like I
Sure.
love watching
Sure.
people play Elden Ring. I can't stand playing Elden Ring. So case in point, you know.
Dude, no,
Um,
I got that game, and about 14 minutes later, I got my money back for that
I'm
game.
telling you,
I
yeah,
was
I was
like,
the same way.
that is. I've got hammers, in my garage I can use to smack myself on the hand at any time. Right. All right. So you got your
So we got
statues there. What
that.
else is?
There's some other ones in there too. There's some nerd stuff in there, like the Mandalorian heavy Mandalorian right here with the Gatling gun behind him is a Ghost Recon Breakpoint character. I played Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I love games that are co-op, like I could run through missions and stuff with friends. And Ghost Recon has always been a favorite of mine, but Ghost Recon Breakpoint was like huge open world that you could run with friends. So I played the crap out of that game. It got a bum rap because it was a game that, to be honest with you, it just didn't have enough content in it to keep it moving, and so a lot of people ditched on it. I played a lot of what the hell is it called? I was about to say Destiny, but that's not Destiny. That is, it'll come to me. I can't remember now. Right now, my brain. Yeah, don't remember. There's a painting behind there that I
Stardew
bought
Valley.
from
It was definitely Stardew
something
Valley.
like that. Yeah, that sniper rifle's totally from it. There's a painting behind it that I bought from a little vendor in Peru. Just this old lady that was just painting murals of the hillsides in Peru. And that one's really stuck out to me, so I bought that. There's some nerd stuff down here. They're little models, World War tanks, World War warships. They're like if you took a full scale model of a warship and then squished it down to be comedic, size and shape. That's what they are. And I got some. So you can't see it too well because of where it's at. But a friend of my mom's painted a picture. Actually, I'll grab it because I'm really proud of this painting. This is a painting of, as you guys can see, all the reflections. It's a koi fish.
That's really cool.
Um, one of my mom's friends painted it. And I thought it was really nice, and my mom bought it for a birthday gift, so I got that. Down there at the bottom is a painting of a surfer in Kona, Hawaii. So I bought that in Hawaii. That reminds me of my time in Hawaii. Anytime I'm there, bunch of Star Wars nerd stuff down there. Division 2 was the name of the game with that guy right there, by the way. Star Wars stuff all
Did
the
it
way
just
up.
hit you? All of it? Was it just hit you?
It no, actually, they're down there's a little character that has a 2 on it, and it reminded me of Division 2.
Ah, all right.
And then all the World of Warship stuff all the way up. But this right here actually was a pretty big deal to me. That's actually a storage device for a decanter and glasses that were laser etched. And that is a reproduction of a 5-inch artillery shell. And the reason that was a big deal to me was because in the Navy, I worked with ordnance. I did a lot of ordnance safety and stuff like that. So that's kind of like a hark back to my time in the Navy. But the decanter, I have laser etched with the fire control, which is my rating name on the front of it, and a bunch of other stuff. So that's kind of like it was my retirement gift to me, essentially, when I bought that. Over here, if the zombie apocalypse ever does happen, I have 2 sabers. Both of them are Navy enlisted sabers. They're actual, legit swords. One of them, actually, the Chiefs one, I actually cut my thumb on it when I first got it because it's
I don't think
legitimately
that's how you use it.
like sharp. I don't think you're supposed to run your thumb across the blades. I feel like
I think that was a
that
movie.
was
I think that's a movie edition. I don't think that's a real. I don't think that's
that
a
was a
real
lesson I
thing.
should have learned earlier. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, information I could have used 3 hours
Yeah,
prior
yeah.
to that.
They should have a note that said don't run finger across blade, but that OSHA should be contacted for that. Anyway,
It's the dumbass test.
And then down here, I got a bunch of my career stuff. So in this box, it says U.S. Navy. I just realized my video is backwards. I need to flip it. But anyway,
Yeah, both of them are.
it's a storage chest, and I've got a lot of my Navy stuff, my ribbons and name tags and stuff like that from my time in the Navy in there. And then right here is a chest that a pretty good friend of mine when I was in the Navy made for me. It actually has the flag on top in a little compartment that was flown on board my ship, and that flag was flying the day that I walked off the ship for the last time.
That is
Yeah,
cool.
so that's going to be something that when I'm old and haggard, up in the VFW with all the rest of the
Next week.
old, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's Friday. It's going to be later on tonight. But yeah, in there I have like an old one of my last uniforms I wore, like folded up and in there and stuff like that. And then up top, the ship. Whenever you leave a command, they always give you a parting gift, and my ship gave paddles away, like rowing paddles, not like adult toy paddles.
Well, I feel like the two might be compatible.
um, but the handle's wrapped in paracord, and they do like a design with paracord all up and down the whole front, and then they put the ship's coin on there. And then when I retired, several of my kids found out the backstory behind a lei that they always give you whenever you land in Hawaii. It's supposed to bring you good luck, bring you good fortune for the future. So I had my kids bought some, of course, not actual flower ones, but faux flower ones. And then somebody bought the Nua seeds, which are these seeds to these trees that grow only in Hawaii. And those ones are supposed to be for royalty and rich people. Same difference. But one of my kids that she tells me I saved her career because she was a problem child when she was young, and she got in trouble, and I was on her disciplinary review board. And whenever I used to do that, my goal was always to make the sailor cry, because if I made the sailor cry, they understood what they did wrong, and I made her cry a lot. And she turned around and was better for it, so it worked.
That's a good story.
But, yeah.
That's a good story. And the flag?
That flag is one of my viewers, actually, who is in New Zealand. That is the New. I hope I don't butcher this. It's the New Zealand ensign that flies on the civilian ships, like the maritime ships at sea, because the military one is actually different than that one. But that is the civilian New Zealand ensign. So that flies on the back of like cargo ships and stuff like that when they're leaving New Zealand. So I told
That's
him I'd
really
fly
cool.
it. He sent it to me, and there it is.
It looks good too, and that's really cool. You got a lot of cool stuff back there. I'm not going to have anywhere near the coolness factor of some of the stuff you have. So my quick tour is going to be obviously keyboards. So this guy here, that's a Yamaha Motif XS6. This is a Yamaha P60. I do only play Yamaha instruments. There's reasons for that.
Why is that?
This is a Hammond XK1. Yeah. So Yamaha. The interesting thing about Yamaha. So if you're going to play a piano, right? I learned to play on a piano. So that's musically that's what
Okay.
I learned on. So I play keys, but I learned to play on a piano and I play guitar. I used to think, but I met guitar players and realized I was not a guitar player. But so the Yamaha instruments, the interesting thing about Yamaha is they also make pianos. So they make pianos and keyboards, and they're the only company that does that, or at least were at
Right.
the time. And so the weighting, the way the weight of the keys feels more resistant, kind of like a piano would feel. A lot of
Oh,
people don't like it, right? Because it takes a lot of work. You have to like it will wear you out on a 4-hour set, right? In a
sure.
4-hour set, about 3 hours in, you're feeling it. But if you play with feel, and you're not a speed player, which I really never was I didn't do a ton of fast stuff,
Right.
or at least not fast compared to, Dragon Force or whoever, Dream Theater, those kind of guys. I didn't do stuff that was fast, but I did stuff that was more feel oriented.
Gotcha.
And the heavier keys give a really, really, really good set of feedback on that.
Okay.
Um, so this is actually, if I ever play anything on a stream or anything, the only keyboard you hear when I play a piano is actually this one. So I use this one
Okay.
as a MIDI controller. This one actually, fun story. No shit. All right, fun story. I was playing a show, and Jojo Herman, most people don't know him by name, but know the band Widespread Panic. He's one of the original members of Widespread Panic. He's the keyboard player for Widespread Panic. Was playing. They were playing a show, some ways down, and we were playing in the same town that night. And because they were playing a show, we decided to cover one of their songs. And so we're sitting there, we're covering the song, and I look back, and there at the bar, there's a dude in a ball cap holding up a wine glass. Now, this is not not the kind of place where there's a lot of wine glasses being held, right? So the guy's holding up a wine glass, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's Jojo Herman," right? So I'm looking back, and it's like, "There's no way that's actually Jojo Herman." Now, most people are not going to recognize this guy on the street, right? But
Yeah,
I play keys, right? I'm actually playing a song he wrote, and
right.
so I'm like looking back, and he's holding up. I was like, "Come play." And he's like, "Nah," he did the whole no, hand motion. I was like seriously, come play. And so he makes his way through the crowd, and security, goes to tackle him. And so I jump off the stage, and I'm like, no, it's cool, it's cool. Well, he just walks right past security. Like, that's a pro move, right? Like, you're like, stop. And he's like, I belong here. Like, there was no
Right.
question in his mind. Most people do that. The huge security guys are like, hey. Most people was paused, not him. He was just like, just walked right by him. So
Nice.
security had turned, and I was like holding him up. I was like, I told him it's all good. And so by the time I turned around to hop on the stage, he was about to start playing. Now, my guitar player was in the middle of a solo, did not see any of this occur. The guitar player was cueing me over and over again to bring him out of the solo. So he's like, win it, win it, win it. It's like, dude, what are
Over
you
and
doing?
over and over.
Over and over again. He's like, I am out of stuff to do. And so he starts walking backwards, right? Because he was in front of the keyboard
Oh yeah.
area, and he starts like moving backwards. And I was like, oh God, his name is Chip. I was like, oh, Chip's about to punch somebody. And he thinks it's me back there. He thinks I'm screwing with him, is what he thinks. Right. So he starts going back. Well, about the time he gets to the keyboards, he starts to turn around, and Jojo Herman starts playing. Now, again, he wrote the song, right? So
Right.
he didn't start playing it like most people would play it. He played it like, I wrote this damn thing. I'm on a stage with another band. I'm gonna do whatever I want. And so
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
starts he starts doing gymnastics on a keyboard.
Oh, that's glorious.
And my guitar player turns around, and I swear to God, the look on his face would have been no different if that had been a Velociraptor playing the keyboard. Because he turns around, he's like, shit, that's Jojo Herman, right? So he like looks over the drummer. So now everybody's aware. Jojo reaches over, grabs me by the hand, helps me up on the stage. So we played that keyboard together. We sang into the same mic, finished the song, and
Oh
played
man.
that organ. So yeah, so that keyboard right there has been played actually by Jojo Herman. I did not get the autograph. I did get free tickets to the show. I did get to hang out backstage.
There you go.
So that was pretty cool.
Worth it.
So you got those are the instruments in here. This is a Hammond XK1. I do have an actual Hammond right organ, like the big
Oh
old
Lord.
church style organs, but I am not dragging it. This weighs 400 pounds. This is one of my favorite pieces. So this flag right here is I don't know if you can see it really well, but it's a Cosmic Charlie, which is a Grateful Dead. It's the Grateful
Yeah,
Dead
yeah,
skull.
yeah.
It's got the yin yang in the head. And this flag was given to me by a guy that that played guitar in one of my bands. And I had this Hammond organ, right? And those Hammonds, the back is closed. Like if you ever see them like at a church and stuff, the back is closed.
Right.
But the cool thing about those instruments is they are a machine, right? They're not electronic. Like it is
Right.
everything in there is a moving part. It makes its sound with a machine. And it looks really cool if you open it up. So like on stage, I was like, I'm gonna open that thing up. And so we had it opened up. We put some lights inside of it, and he gave me this one
Oh
day,
man.
and I draped it over the organ. And so the back was just lit up through this organ. And so from then on, this thing went to every show. This was on every stage I played on. So that one is actually kind of a cool piece from me, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, I have my rat gear audio stuff. I'm obviously into a lot of that. I've got a really cool fader port mixer, also into fountain pens. So I have ink right here, ink wells, and I do always have a fountain pen on me. And then you can't see them all. There's at least I don't know 15
I
microphones.
was gonna say, how many microphones do you have, do you think?
Yeah, there's well, okay, there's enough to mic an entire 7-piece band. How about that? Including including horns. So that's drums and everything. There's a lot of microphones around here.
So I have to
So
say,
yeah,
anytime that there's audio questions, you're the guy. I always said, A, you're the voice, and B, you're the audio guy. If anybody ever
I
has
don't know about the
questions.
voice, but the audio guy, I will give it the good old college try. How about that? So yeah, that I thank you for sharing it. I've wondered about some of the stuff behind you,
Yeah.
for certain. I
I
think
I
that's
mean,
really cool.
there's a lot of little things that I don't. I mean, they're a little bit more personable. Like, for me, I've got so Asians historically are very what's the word I'm looking for? Very superstitious. So, like, case in point, in my front door, I've got a pair of dragons that are guarding the front door against evil spirits, and then there's like, down here, you guys can't see it because it's blacked out pretty much because of the lighting, but that is a mask, and that mask is supposed to also ward off evil spirits. If you were a kid, you'd look at that, probably be scared of the mask because it looks pretty scary, but I mean, it's a lot of
Well, I
little
mean, it's
things
meant to
back there,
scare
but
evil spirits.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So little
Yeah,
things like
anything bad
that.
enough to scare evil spirits probably scare a 4-year-old.
I remember my dad had this same kind of thing, but he got it from a Japanese monastery when we were, I mean, I wasn't even born yet, so you're talking 50 years ago. And I remember growing up when I was young, if the lights were off, it didn't matter how dark it was in the basement, I could see that mask like across the room. I had to run from downstairs because you're always so scared of the thing. But my dad always had that mask up. Like, I just, as far back
Is it
as
the
I can
same one?
remember. So, it's
Or no,
similar. His is different.
okay,
His
cool.
was
So is it,
actually
I was gonna
like,
say is
no, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, is it like a design that is like the design that does that, or is it a general like as an art form, like a general design that's kind of meant
It's
for
an
that
art
purpose?
form. It's a type
Gotcha.
of, yeah. It's all hand carved out of koa wood and stuff. And then he's got, because when he was there, he got it from, like I said, a Japanese monastery. So they like blessed it and everything. And it's got like, they always put little. I mean, I suppose the similarity would be runes. They put little like marks on the side of it so you could see something in Japanese. I don't know off the top of my head, but and then they mount it on a nice little frame thing. So I got kind of the knockoff cheap version.
The dollars,
Yeah,
dollar store demon
it may
warding. I don't know if
not.
that's a good idea.
It may ward them off. It may not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's it wards off only the
50
not so
50.
bad ones. And the
60% of the
not so
time, it
bad
works every
ones.
time.
Mm. Something else to mention, Happy Fodder, we both enjoy whiskey in several forms,
Yeah,
bourbon as well. And so on these podcasts, we will be having probably an imbibement of some sort. We don't overdo it, but definitely something we enjoy. And not too long from now, we're going to be having one together. I'm looking forward to that.
yes, sir. That's actually, and he and I talked about this. We were talking about, because I obviously we need to get a thumbnail up for the channel itself, and I was like, we got to figure out what we're gonna do. And I was like, you know what, we're gonna be meeting up at the USS Kid next weekend, so we can get somebody to snap a photo maybe of us raising a glass or something, and we could do that as the thumbnail. So that'll be good.
I'm looking forward. I am really really looking forward to that. I appreciate you put that together. That was you, so I appreciate you putting that together. I'm looking forward to being there. I'm looking forward to the drive down. So we're gonna be down there, have a good time. Hopefully benefit the kid a little bit.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
learn something. Definitely get to meet some new people. So I'm looking forward to introverting with you.
It's like one of those things that's gonna be forced, but it's not at the same time.
Well, if you prep for it for enough time, you can get through the
Yeah,
night, right?
seriously. Oof.
Um, so subjects, right? We've done some introductions.
Yeah.
We did have some things we wanted to kind of talk through. We have no idea where this is going to go.
No
We have
idea.
no idea how these conversations are going to go. So if you get offended, screw you. Okay, so first and foremost,
It's a good way to talk to your
we're going to
community.
talk.
I'm just saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a whole new 7 here. I'm now completely toxic.
He's
No,
now 8.
I'm not. It's a 6, going backwards.
This fair enough.
So we were going to talk about something that's been in the news a lot lately. And what was funny is when we put this together originally, right? The subject list. So kind of pull back the curtain here. We put this subject list together originally. This item was on the original subject list. And we were like, let's do some topical stuff that's timely.
Yeah.
I really didn't think that a month and a half later, that item, because we missed, right? Doing, like we
Yeah.
said, some of these
Yeah.
things. I really didn't think this item would be on there, but we wanted to talk about Elon Musk buying Twitter, not buying Twitter, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll start like kind of with you. Like, where's your head at on this now?
I mean, well, first of all, it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that a single person. I mean, I get it. He's not like going down to your local bank and making a withdrawal, and he's probably not just writing a check, right? But the fact that a single individual has made the conscious decision to essentially override a company's board and buy out the company, that to me, I mean, you've seen a lot of stuff in the media. People talk, are fear mongering, essentially, is what it boils down to, right? But I think it's a good thing, actually. I At least the way it looks now. Obviously, we're just seeing the surface. We don't know how in depth it is, but I think it's a good thing that you have somebody at least that seems somewhat level-headed trying to get involved in that fashion. Um, are there risks involved? 100%. Like, it's kind of a scary idea that you could have somebody, and I said that to you earlier, having one person own a social media outlet, but at the same time, I mean, that's essentially how Facebook has been for since its inception, right? Essentially.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, Facebook's an interesting one. It was built to creep on girls, right? So,
yeah.
where it came from, like that was the reason.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not telling anyone something they don't know. But that is the
Surprise!
right because if someone didn't know that and I said that, it's going to sound edge lord style. I'm not. That was
But
not
it,
what I
but
meant. Like it was
it was kind of how
legitimately
it
built for that
was.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was actually built for that purpose. So,
Yeah.
like the core of where it came from was just a really different space. And you're right. Zuckerberg has legitimately not let go of seemingly, he's hired some really great executives who have been in,
Yeah.
and out and in,
Yeah.
and but he seemingly hasn't let go of a lot of control of it. The Twitter is in the same. Jack Dorsey's still, he's still involved, right? He's still around, but for whatever reason, he's kind of dodged uh, being seen as the overlord on Twitter,
Right.
like Zuckerberg has been on Facebook. And you got like the, Alexis Ohanian who did the who Reddit, right? Who started with
Yeah.
Reddit, and
Yeah.
and those guys seem to kind of be willing to be a little bit back, and so it's going to be interesting. And I'm really interested in your viewpoints on that because Elon Musk stepping in on Twitter, it is a front and center guy, right? It's not the tech exec who's going to be like, I'm in the back getting work done. He is gonna be front and center, and is maybe it's so he can shut down
Well,
the
here's
kid
my
that's like tracking
question.
his flights or what.
Is he what he's doing now any different than what a media mogul might do, say, 50 years ago, buying a newspaper? Realistically, because this is the new media, right? Social media is the new. I mean, it's not new, but it essentially has replaced the newspaper. It replaced periodicals, I guess, is a better way of putting it. Because let's be honest with you, magazines and newspapers are going the way of the dodo. Like, they're just,
You
you
think it's
know.
gonna replace the dirigibles though? I mean, periodicals, dirigibles, like what?
I love that you said that. Side story. Sorry, guys. Inside joke. But
I knew I would get it in there somewhere.
but I mean, let's be honest. That's at least that's how I've looked at social media for the last 10 years. It's that is the new newspaper, the new magazine, the new whatever, because everybody's on their phone. If you're in a waiting room, people aren't looking at the magazine sitting on the table anymore. They're like this with their phone, right? Like they're
Sure.
they're legitimately just surfing away, or So that's where
Right.
all the ad revenue is. That's where all the news, unfortunately, is sent out, though not really news anymore. But the flip side to it now is you had a media source that was capable of funneling your view to a direction. I think more so than a newspaper or a magazine, maybe, because I almost feel like people are blindly believing what they see on those social media outlets more than back in the day with newspapers and what have you. And that might not be the case. I might be completely off, but it just seems that way to me, at least. So
It's interesting, and you and I talked about how much into our real life backgrounds and stuff we're going to go, and we will dip into it from time to time. But we have kind of agreed we're not going to be too detailed about it.
sure,
But I spend a lot of time, in my career, I spent a lot of time working in the ad industry, and it's a really interesting thing to consider. Um, Ads, right? So digital advertising is a fundamentally different animal than
right,
what we had available to us during television commercials or newspapers or magazines or wherever you're going to purchase an ad and the publication would do what they did with it. Digital advertising is a lot different, and I've been around long enough to say that it wasn't always right because there was a time when you would fire up a site, and if you wanted to do advertising on that site, whether you were New York Times or whoever you might have been, if you wanted to place
right,
ads on that site, you wrote a system in that site. You wrote the software where you would show the ad, right? And then someone on your team at your company would go out and they would say, "Hey, I want to sell ads on my site," right? So it was that was a very newspaper esque, right, model, right?
gotcha.
But at some point, and this was say early 2000s, mid, maybe 2005 ish, whatever. Digital advertising turned into a few networks,
Mm,
and so you had very few networks, and they've since been consolidated even further. So you've got Google, right? You've got definitely Facebook, and that's the
right,
space they play in. And we're going to cover some of this actually a little bit later. So this is a bit of a foreshadowing, so I won't go too deep into it. But what's interesting, what's going to be really fascinating to me is you see like the Facebooks of the world. They go before Congress, right? And they're talking about, hey, what's going on here? And Zuckerberg realistically, and I believe completely honestly and legitimately says, I don't know, right? Because there's an algorithm that makes these
yeah,
decisions,
yeah,
right? It's I'm not in control of it, right? There's
yeah,
there's a machine sitting in a basement somewhere that everyone's afraid to touch because that's how it all works, and it's making the decisions, right? And so like the timeline that Hapa sees is different than the one that Seven sees, right? So
right,
it's going to be interesting to me. Twitter is a player in that space. They are not the biggest player by any means in that space, and so it'll
sure,
be interesting, if Elon Musk is willing to spend 45 billion, what reported numbers are, 43, 45. The guy's worth
yeah,
256 billion dollars. Like this is
yeah.
it is monopoly money to this human
It's a
being, right? So
Saturday for him.
yeah, right. Like if he does that, I am really curious to see what he does. There's a whole lot of talk about who he'll ban, who he'll
Right,
unban,
yeah,
right? That's kind of to me, that's there. But I
yeah.
am really curious to see what does this human being believe is his profit here, right? What is his? It's not altruistic. I refuse to believe that
You don't
Elon
think
Musk
so?
operates. I don't think you get $256 billion being altruistic.
Sure,
And so I'm really curious to see what happens with that ad space, right? Is there
yeah,
something he's got in mind? Or maybe it is altruistic, right? Maybe he is just like, I could buy Mars if we could get to it. Like, I've got that
yeah,
much money, right? Maybe
yeah.
I just want to do this because I want to screw with the SEC, which he's been doing a lot, right?
Oh, totally.
Like,
Yeah,
he's completely breaking like 56 laws in this
yeah,
process. So
yeah.
I am curious to see, my opinions on Elon Musk notwithstanding, I'm curious to see about a human being saying, "I want to buy Twitter." Right? We'll go back to it. It's unprecedented. It is.
Yeah,
He wants to
yeah,
take it private. Right? It's a public company. He wants to take it
yeah,
private.
yeah.
He wants to buy it. He wants to own it. He wants it to be his. That's going to be an interesting
I'm
thing. And then even more interesting, I want to see if people stick around.
that's where I was about to say. I'm curious to see with let's just say the first or second large changes he makes if the membership drops. I'm kind of curious to see that. Like, he's talked about being willing to looking into letting President Trump back onto Twitter. Okay, that's fine. I'm a firm believer that nobody should get banned from a. Well, let me be clear. If you have guidelines that are there and you break said rules, then yes, you should get warnings and so on and so forth before you get ousted. Because you click that OK button. It's just like you and I have talked about the EULA in video games before. There are rules there. If you violate the rules, okay, you've already clicked OK when you installed, the game or whatever the case may be. And I believe it should be the same way for social media. But what worries me is that if you have a privately owned company, it becomes privately owned that the person could ad hoc just no, you're I don't like you, go away, kind of thing. And I don't
Sure.
necessarily believe it because that whole freedom of speech thing, it's a freedom of speech. It doesn't mean you're free to be a dick. excuse my language, but I mean that's
Yeah,
you should
you're not free
still
from consequences of speech.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah,
and
there's
that and I think
it'll
that's the mark that some people miss when they look at that freedom of speech thought process. It's like, well, yeah, you have the freedom. It doesn't mean you need to exercise it. You know.
yeah, and I think there's a really interesting aspect to social media, right? Because social media, when it was first cranking up, there was a whole lot of talk about how do we regulate it. Like that did come
Right.
up. It wasn't like it wasn't like we
Right.
just
Yeah.
missed it.
This isn't new.
And right, it's not new, and I don't think our generation is going to figure it out. I'm hoping my kids' generation,
Right.
will be like, here's how it should work. But um, social media is policed heavily by the companies who provide the site, and one of the reasons that happens is they get a pass on
Yeah.
on hosting content, right?
Yeah.
So like if somebody puts a pictures up there which are patently illegal, right? And there's entire categories of that.
Sure.
Social media companies get a pass on that. Like Facebook doesn't get dinged on that by
Right.
from a legal standpoint.
Right.
Only if they're policing. So they have to be able to prove that they're giving a best effort to police. And so what's interesting to me, and you're talking about privately held companies, right? What's going to be interesting is everyone draws that line of what should and should not be policed in a
Mm-hmm.
different place. And when you're talking about shareholders, there's an accountability for executives there that you don't have in a privately held company.
Sure.
And vendettas may get carried out. Like that could
Oof.
be a real thing. And I'm curious to see, like, what does it mean if a single individual is so powerful, that they don't have to pay their taxes, first of all. And second of all, instead of paying their taxes, they buy Twitter. Right?
Yeah.
Like I can't pay my taxes. I don't got
Yeah.
no cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I sorry you don't have any cash, man. That sounds really sad. Yeah. And they go away and it's like, I'm about Twitter for 45 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did have cash.
No. No.
Right? Like,
No. No. I didn't
do
have
you
it.
have cash or do you not have cash? Like, let's decide.
Oh.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I like your viewpoints on that. I think it's going to be if he pushes through with it, or was he just trolling them? Because that could be.
That would be pretty funny, actually. At the end, he was just like, "Just kidding." Like,
He's trying to back out now, and the board is like, you agreed to forego. I don't know if you've seen this, like the latest, right? But the board was like, he'd said, I'm not interested because he thinks too many accounts are spam accounts, right? And so the board came back and was like, you actually waived due diligence. Like you actually signed away the right to walk away. You went on Twitter, you made the claim, right? You bought Twitter using
wasn't
Twitter,
it? Wasn't it their claim? 95% of all users on Twitter are actual individuals,
are legit. There's
not
no way.
bots.
There's no way.
I mean, I'm
There's
not.
no.
I'm not gonna say that he's right, but I would agree with that it's not. I'm sure it's like 80. I'm sure it's like 80%.
Dude, I know one, and there have been times when I was doing, I was active in a music arena. There are
Sure.
times when there were Twitter bots that stole my stuff and tried to pretend to be me, right? So
Jesus.
I'm nobody, right? And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
happened to me,
Yeah.
I, I, I'd be surprised if half the accounts. I wouldn't be a bit
I
surprised
will say I
if
see
half
it a
the accounts
lot
are
on
bots.
Instagram. A lot on Instagram.
You mean
Um,
bots?
yeah, there's people that I follow that it seems like every other week they're posting a screenshot. This is a bot account. Please, report it or whatever. It seems very,
Hmm.
very, very frequent on Instagram. I don't personally notice it on Twitter. Maybe I'm just blind and I don't pay attention to that stuff as much. But I mean, I have had Amaranth follow me a couple times on Twitter. So I thought I was hitting the big league for a little while there.
Well, I mean, maybe you're just IJS, like
I'm
that
just
doesn't
saying.
surprise me.
You
That
can't
doesn't surprise
you can't,
me.
can't
That
go a
Amaranth
day
is not
looking
an
like
angry
this
color.
without knowing shit like shit.
Yeah, absolutely. You keep having to change your Twitter handle to get away. I know.
Always,
You
regularly, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Look, just
So-
stop, all right?
Just yeah. Listen.
Just give it up, all right? It'll never work out.
All right, as HAPA Fighters legal counsel, I would like to ask you to cease and desist.
Exactly. Just give it up, all right?
So moving on to kind of next subject.
Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about, and you mentioned Amaranth, so I think that's not a bad, not a bad segue. In some ways, So one of the questions that you and I have been kind of tangling with, and we've been talking about this for a minute, is streaming.
Yeah.
Like as an form of entertainment, is it a viable, sustainable form of entertainment, right? Is it something that people can make money on? Like, is it viable to make money on it? Right? Sure, we have Doc Disrespect, right? Like, dude puts on a mullet,
Yeah,
like people give him $50 million,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's not
Which, by
sustainable, right?
not to switch off too much, have you seen that dude in real life?
Like, as in person, have I met him?
Like without the getup on? You ever
No,
seen
no,
pictures or
I have
anything?
not. Uh,
I would never in a million years guess that this dude makes his living streaming video games. He looks like a very kind of guy. Like,
does he?
yes, very much. Except for his mustache is real, by the way. So that's the only legit part of his
So
personality.
the
Anyway,
porn stash is real.
yeah, the port stash is 100% him.
Well, and I think he's a decent one to talk about, right? Because he's actually at the top of the game, right? Like he
Yeah,
is the as live streaming entertainment goes, he's kind of the top of the pile.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, he's got a gimmick, sure, but he consistently puts out a level of quality
yeah.
that his community is into, right? And so, is it viable? Right. Sure. The guy's made more money than he will ever need. Is it sustainable? I don't know. Could he do it twice? Right. That's how I would define a kind of sustainability. Right. Can you continue to do it? I don't know the answer to that.
You
I'm
mean as
I'm
like a
kind of
career?
curious your thoughts. Well, okay. So let's define viability and
Okay,
sustainability. Right. So viability. Right. Can it make you money? Can it make the company money? Both of those things are important, right?
sure,
Because you can't continue to have it without the platform. So, do both
sure,
people make money in that situation to a degree, right? Viability meaning to a degree where they don't have to do something else.
right.
Right now, sustainability. Can you do that for 5 years? Right? Can you continue that trend for a long period of time?
I think if you were to start streaming today, well, no, let me
Like
backtrack on
us?
it. The way I look at streaming and streamers is this. This is a career move you're making, right? So, case in point, how long have you been in the industry you have been in? How many
28 years.
years? So 28 years you've been in the industry you're in right now. You make the salary you do now as a result of that 28 years experience and blah 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 blah.
Right.
So the problem I have is, so like case in point, streaming is viable and sustainable for someone like me because I had a 21 plus year career prior.
Mm,
I have a retirement, I have an income, right? So my thing is if you're going to be a streamer, let's say you're starting today, you need to look at it as if you are starting a new career as the bottom employee. And you've got to put the time in, you've got to work your way to, I mean, you may never make it to Amaranth or Dr. Disrespect or Ninja level because you may just get burnt out, which is a definite possibility with any career, right? The problem with it streaming is, let's just take Twitch as a perfect example. You are not only fighting, and I hate using the word fighting, but essentially that's what it is. You're competing with every other streamer out there. You're competing with Twitch because Twitch is going to always make more money than you're going to make, right? They're going to profit from you, period. It's like the adage I always talk about goodwill, because the goodwill actually is an at profit organization. They make money off
right.
of the stuff that you
Right.
give them, right? And Twitch is the same way. So you essentially have to be like, well, I've been streaming for X amount of years before you're going to be able to be like, well, I'm making some pretty good money here, you know? And we both know streamers that have been streaming for, quite a while, and they can see those numbers and they already know. Um, in my opinion, if someone's like, well, I'm going to quit working wherever and stream full time, well, in my opinion, that's not necessarily viable from a get go. Dr. Disrespect, so I don't know if you know or not, but he started working in game design, level design for first person shooters. That was his actual profession. He worked for game studios. And he had a job offer to a studio in Washington and I think a studio here in Texas somewhere. And he met, I think at the time was his now manager. And this is a very condensed version of his career, of course, but he started streaming as like kind of like a joke. He was like, same reason that you and I talk about streaming now. Like, we're playing games, we might as well be sharing it with people anyway because we're just playing games.
Right.
But his energy and his, I don't want to even say toxic personality, but it's a very borderline, right? He's very borderline toxic at times.
Right. Right.
Is alluring to that community, and that's essentially what pulled in. And then you had games that landed perfectly in line with when he was. So it was, timing, 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 as they say.
Right. Right.
If I'm doing this today, what I'm doing right now, I do not believe that I could depend on the income to live off of. And that's just my personal opinion off of what I'm seeing now. Um, as an augment to other income coming in, 100% perfect.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, because of the ninjas and Dr. Disrespects and Amaranths and all the successful streamers out there, Alex Zedras, and that had great timing and product placement at just the right, like things just lined up for them. I think people have like this unreal opinion of the possibility, and sometimes you crash and burn, man, because if you're streaming 5 times a week for 5 hours, you're actually working more than 40 hours a week because you're doing social media, you're doing your prep, you're doing all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a lot
And
more work. The music industry is the same way, and I
yeah,
used to run into that quite a bit. Where it was always interesting to me. We'd play clubs, right, or we play bars, or we play somewhere,
sure.
and the smaller the venue, I think it was kind of a truism, right? But the smaller the venue, the more the people there assumed you were there to party, right?
Oh, right,
And as a band, you're not, right? If
right,
you're a good band, right? As a musician, you're working. And are you potentially having a drink? Yeah, somebody else buys it for you, right? You'd be surprised at how little musicians will drink, good
sure,
musicians will drink during a set because they're doing something that's really hard to do.
right,
And they would assume, oh, you're there to party. You're not, you're working, right? So the amount of
yeah,
work you put in has the if you do a 4 hour show, you generally do two sets of 2 hours, right? 4 hours. And there's 2 hours of loading in, there's 2 hours of loading out, right? Not to include driving. You're at 8 hours now, right? You're already at an 8 hour window. That doesn't include any of the work it took to be prepared for the thing. So it strikes me like that, and it strikes me like baseball. I can't
yeah.
I can't tell you how someone would say if someone's like, "What are you gonna do for a living?" "I'm gonna play baseball." Oh, right. How do you respond to that, right? Like everyone's gonna be like, you might want to have a backup plan. And I feel like streaming has the same sort of
Yeah,
sure you might be that one, right? You might
yeah,
be that person that's just so entertaining that people can't get enough of it. I mean, look at some of the streamers that we talk about who are really big streamers, right? That are these retained streamers, is what I call them, right? The people that the platforms are willing to pay
yeah,
just flat out to make sure they don't go
yeah,
anywhere else. A lot of those people are boring, right? You go watch their streams, there's no reason to watch their stream. And
yeah,
so there's a whole lot of confirmation bias around people that watch. Now, some of these streamers are putting, I think Doc Disrespect is not a bad example. He
yeah,
works you can tell.
yeah.
Like the amount of work that goes in, you may love it, you may hate it. There is no denying how much work goes into making that production. Um,
I'm
and some of
curious to
these
see
folks,
after he's done streaming how I bet he's exhausted after a stream
I
because
bet you're right.
he keeps his energy like pegged through the entire
Dude,
stream.
he works, man. He works.
Yeah,
And I watch
yeah,
it and I'm like, I'm not necessarily a fan, but I'll watch and I'm like, you got to respect that. That's a show,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, and then you watch some and it's,
yeah, yeah.
you're an idiot, chat.
It
And I'm
blows my
like,
mind that some of
why?
those are successful too. Like that just
Yeah,
blows my
why are
mind.
5,000 people watching this
Yeah,
person
yeah,
berate chat?
yeah.
Well, why are you? And I'm sitting there. I'm in chat too,
And
right?
you're
And I'm
watching
sitting
it.
there. I'm watching. I'm like,
Damn
why
it!
are all you other people watching this? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
son of a bitch, you got me.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. But
so I
you
mean,
have,
is it?
and that's what I think. I feel like streaming had a heyday where if you've been around long enough now and you put the time in, you're going to do well. I do feel like that's a thing. Um, but I also think you have to be willing to. So some of the content creators I watch, so like I watch Jack Frags on YouTube, and he streams on YouTube, and he puts up a lot of YouTube videos. He is not boring. And I'll watch any of his content. He's got a lot of friends that are in the UK with him that he plays games with and stuff. They're just straight entertaining, and there's no toxicity. He doesn't curse out other players. He doesn't curse on stream. That's one of the things that I saw. He was reading comments in his chat, and someone had mentioned like, "How do you do that? You're playing Warzone." Like it's one of the most toxic games verbally ever, and you don't curse. And he's like, he responded very clearly. He said, I recognized a long time ago that companies don't want to work with me if all I do is curse and scream and yell. So I've stopped. I just literally stopped. He's like, if you look at my content 4 or 5 years ago, I used to be that way. It doesn't get me, where I'm at now. And I think that's one of the things where sometimes streamers corner themselves because they're like, this content works now, it'll work tomorrow, it'll work the day after, and you have to be willing to be agile almost in being able to shift. Like streaming the same game, I mean, I hate to say it because you and I stream pretty much the only one game. That 100% is not sustainable. It is not. You
Absolutely.
have to be
Absolutely.
willing to play other games. You have to in order to be successful because just like TV, just like movies, just like music, tastes change, and you have to be willing to ebb and flow with that. I think so.
I'm really wondering, I mean, we talk about it a lot, and there's a lot of. It's interesting. There's so much I want to say there, but it's interesting because it's an entertainment medium, first and foremost, right? People
Yeah,
will or will not watch because they are or are not entertained. You can
yeah,
argue with why they're entertained or how, right? But
yeah,
that is what they're doing. This is their casual hours they're using to watch something. Some people it's 24/7, right?
yeah.
Um, but if you're talking about television, right? Go back to the nearest. I think the nearest term medium was television. You had radio, you had others. But
Yeah.
television, you had your 7 seasons if you were lucky, and you were done, right?
Yep.
And a lot of those actors and actresses never went on to anything else.
Yep.
They got chose to play a role, and outside of Band of Brothers, David Schwimmer never did anything else, right? So that you remember, right? And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And I think streaming is interesting because I watch people, and I'm going to keep talking on Doc Disrespect, right? Because he's just a good example.
Yeah.
If people get tired of what he's doing, right? If it gets stale, if people don't want to see it anymore, what's the next move? Can you reinvent? This is going to be really, we don't know yet. Like, we don't have, streamers haven't had to do this yet.
Well, I suppose for him, does he need to? Dude's a millionaire, hands down.
Yeah, or does he stop? Fair point. Jennifer
It,
Aniston, she's done plenty of stuff, right?
well, that's why. What was the actor recently that told? He announced that he's retiring from acting, and he's still pretty young. God, I can't remember. I was just like, wow, he's like, to me, he just seems like he's like, it sounds horrible, but he's at his half life of acting because actors go till they're almost
Some
90. I mean,
game,
you
yeah.
look at Morgan
Right.
Freeman; he's still acting, right? Um,
Yeah, he's only
but
36.
yeah, right. But I feel like that's been the thing for me. I suppose if you're one of those people that's always looking for the next hustle, I mean, I hate to say it that way, but like essentially that's what it is, right? So that's why like World of Warships was a great in for me because I started working in the games industry. I got connections, left streaming. Those connections has helped my streaming, right? But I'm still looking at well, what's down the road, right? For
Right.
me at least, I'm looking at doing other things. Someone like a Doctor Disrespect or a Ninja or a Stott or a Jack Frags or Amaranth. Like Amaranth bought a freaking. Didn't she buy like a town or something like? like she bought Houston or something like that. I don't know.
I don't think it was Houston.
Oh, very well.
Maybe it
Uh,
was. Maybe it was.
but
I mean, it
but
was
I
on the
feel
market for
like
like 7 years.
nobody really wanted it. She was like,
Yeah,
"All
the
right,
front
here's
yard
an
was never
offer."
mowed quite right.
There's always a bunch of junk trucks in the front. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I also feel like streamers like that also got to a size where they actually got business managers and they probably got smart. I would hope
Yeah.
and invested in because today, man, I don't know, man. I don't know how hard it's got to be to get to the point where you've got I don't know, 1,000 people watching you stream. Like that's, you know, the beginning of this month, I was lucky enough to be featured on the front page of Twitch, and I had 15,000 people watching me at one point. Like that was nerve wracking for me on stream because I'm thinking, God, don't say the wrong thing, don't piss anybody off. Like so I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine doing that on a day to day basis either, because that's,
yeah.
I mean, it's got to be the same if you're doing a gig, right? Because you could end up in a place where you got 1,000 people watching. I'd imagine, and live is
It,
probably even worse.
well, it is, but you have a band, right? So the interesting thing about that is you have a prep, you have a here's what we're gonna do, right? So you have a plan. And it's interesting, and maybe we close on kind of this thought and we talk through this, but I met with someone yesterday, and I'm not going to go into details of who he was, but the guy owns a management company, right? And the management company manages artists, and it's
Sure.
musical artists. He's got a couple, but he manages artists, and it's people you would know. And so I was talking to this guy, and he was talking about a really interesting thing that you just hit on because you started talking about streamers having managers and all this stuff. The deals you have to sign with talent management agencies does necessarily, in traditional fields, sign away ownership and rights to some of your creative property,
Ooh.
right? So, right in music, right? He and I were talking about this, and one of the acts that he's got is an enormous in demand internationally act,
Sure.
and the pandemic was really hard, right? So they are talking about as a management company who wants to make money devoid of the art, right? The management company is not there to create art. They
Right.
are there to make money, right? Very
Right.
specifically to make money.
Yeah.
In that space, they would look for any way they could to have the artist removed from the equation because the artist is hard to deal with, right?
Right.
The artist has schedules. The artist has an attitude. The artist can get sick. They
Yeah.
just want the art, and if they could find a way to sell the art to an audience devoid of the artist
Oh
itself, they
man,
would do it.
that's scary.
And well, but that's the business side of it. And they're going to be pragmatic. Now, they haven't no one's figured out yet how to completely
Right.
separate the artist, right?
Right.
But I'm looking at streamers, right, who come in and like I've got a management company, right? I'm curious to see like what did you sell? Right? What does
Sure.
that management company actually own? So let's say one of these ninja, right, decides I'm done. I don't want to reinvent myself. Right? I don't I've made my money.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
drive Ferraris around racetracks because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Does the
Now,
brand live
I
on
think he
without the
actually did that
person?
though. I think Ninja actually did that though when he left Twitch and went to whatever Facebook tried to do. Wasn't it Facebook or was it? I don't remember.
Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft's didn't he
What
did
was
that?
the
He
name of that
signed.
one? There was a name of
I
that
don't
one, right?
remember. He signed a time
Yeah,
gated streamer deal where it said he wasn't allowed to go anywhere. It wasn't allowed to stream anywhere except for on their platform. And as many of us saw, I saw the ahead of time. It's like there's no way you're out doing Twitch. It's
right.
impossible. It's like recreating with like back in the day, laser discs and DVDs, like trying to figure out which one was going to win. You know, it it and so for me, it's like I think that's why Twitch is able to be like, even if you stream 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're gonna get 70% of your income. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you can't argue it. You have nowhere else to go, right? Like,
Yeah. If there was one music venue or two, let's
yeah,
say
because I
Madison
mean,
Square Garden,
technically YouTube, and Facebook, so there's technically three,
right? But
right?
let's say there's Madison Square Garden, right? You can go play at MSG, right? We can play at
Sure,
Madison Square Garden
yeah.
or Timmy's Bar, which is down on the corner,
It's
right?
like the perfect analogy.
Yeah. And look, I mean, functionally, they're the same. There will be a 15-foot by 15-foot stage at Timmy's
Right.
Bar, right? There will be
Timmy's
speakers that make
bar.
some amount of sound. There
Jesus.
will be some drunk people yelling at you, right? That is going to happen. So what's the difference between that and Madison Square Garden, right? Like you can get real in the
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
but Twitch is so far beyond YouTube and especially Facebook, right? Facebook's a long way to go.
They're trying, man.
Um, they're trying, but you know what I hate about Facebook? I'm just gonna be honest. You know why I would not stream on Facebook?
Hmm.
because I don't need to see Granny.
Hey, mom, how are you
I, re-
doing?
I really don't. I really don't need to see Meemaw. You know, like
Meemaw in
Meemaw
stream
7.
in the chat.
Right. That's my boy. I don't need to see that. And that's what
Trying to explain to my parents that I stream on Twitch like 4 times a week alone is they're just
oh
like they
man,
just
my
do the
dad.
yeah, okay, they just nod their head
You
and
got a Twitch?
yeah,
You
yeah,
got a
what is
what?
that? What does that mean?
It's streaming. That sounds like you need a doctor, man.
Like, why is he so angry? I don't understand. I didn't
Twitching
raise
is
you this
streaming.
way.
This is not how you were raised, young Happa.
Do you need
All right, all
lasagna,
right.
honey? The lasagna's on the counter.
Yeah, ma, what's the cheesy pea?
Jesus.
All right. So kind of the last thing we wanted to cover today, which is not a bad segue, talking about Twitch and these giants, right? How they make their money. And I don't know if you
Speaking
want
of
to show this.
giants, Rita's in there.
Uh, Pardon?
The giant streamers. Rita's in chat.
Ah, it's
Speaking of
Rita.
giant streamers,
Yes, yes. So I don't know if you want to show, right, the diagrams that I sent you, or we want to talk through them or what, but we stumbled across something that was really interesting. And we've hit on it a couple of times, kind of unintentionally. We did not intend to,
yeah,
have foreshadowing here. It's just kind of a part of the general conversation. But how do tech companies, these huge tech companies, actually make their money? Right? Where do they get their money?
yeah.
And how do they come by it? So I don't know. Do you want to talk through it? Do you want to show it? What do you want to do?
I need to figure out how.
Ooh.
Um. So
Should I play some Musac?
that's what I found the button. I found it. I found it. Nobody
Oh,
worry.
there's just a button. All you ever needed was a button.
That's all I ever needed. Why did it go there though? I don't understand. Uh,
You're gonna have to create a new scene, aren't you?
no, I just need to do the what do you call it? Capture the
Rita says I stand tall at 5'3". Is Rita really 5'3"?
she's tiny, man. I swear I'm a professional chat. I swear.
When'd you get your partnership again?
The big thing for me was making sure I chop a lot of the
Oh,
browser. That's
yeah.
why I did it. I didn't do it, to be honest with you. But we're gonna do it. Hopefully, it's. Why does it seem like your camera? Oh, the alignment wasn't there. Okay, so I'm gonna enlarge this more so it's easier to see. And we'll do like mirror, and then I'll zoom in. Watch this, chat. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. Then I'm gonna go back to that. Now watch the magic.
And now
Eh?
I'm just realizing I'm gonna be on a 15-second delay. Oh, there it is.
It's almost like I know what I'm doing.
Ooh, pro move. So
So
yeah,
this
how
is
to
an article by Visual Capitalist, by the way, if you didn't know.
yeah, and I mean, how do tech giants make their billions? This is a really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Right, this is a really interesting look at where do people get their money, and I have a lot of opinions about this stuff.
I mean,
So Emma, go ahead.
it's interesting when you think about it in terms of the scale. And I think that's I mean, when you look at the numbers in the article right now, the scale of it alone is a little boggling. Um, I can't
Yeah,
even
it
imagine these
really.
numbers.
What is it? Says in 2021, the big five tech companies generated more than $1.4 trillion in revenue.
That's
Right, that's more than Mexico's entire GDP.
that's
These companies.
insane.
This is five companies.
I can zoom out a little bit so you can see a little bit better the whole thing. Hopefully that's clear. There you go.
Yeah. So Amazon, right? Amazon's an interesting one to me. I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger so I can see it. So their total
I kind
revenue,
of
four
wish they
hundred
broke this
sixty-nine point
down a
eight
little
billion.
bit in terms in that company, like how they made what they did
What do you think
a
about?
little
Does
bit
any of this?
more.
So I know a bit about this, right? Like this is a world that I've lived in for a long time. I know a little bit about this. Does
No,
any of
this is
this
all you.
surprise you? Well, but
Um,
I'm and just when you're looking at it, right? To me, some of this is just I know, right? Because I have
the
to know.
third
But
party seller services kind of I that kind of throws me off actually.
yeah, the 22% coming from third party
Yeah,
seller
I
services. Yeah.
would not anticipate that much. I mean, you're talking, a fifth almost of your overall being third party selling. That's kind of
Hmm.
interesting to me. I wonder how much of that is actual because it says commission, shipping fees, and other services. So I'm guessing a large portion of that is probably shipping fees. A lot of the shipping that goes on globally, probably.
Yeah, that's a good call because you're not selling the product, right? So
Right.
you're making money off of the sell of the product, and
Right.
that is 22% of your business. So that has to
Yeah.
represent an enormous amount of like cash transference.
Yeah.
And to me, the one that is always really fascinating is AWS. How familiar are you with AWS?
Not.
No?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so AWS is
their
a
servers.
yep, it's their Amazon
Okay.
Web Services. So, right? So AWS is a really fascinating thing because Amazon got so good at building their retail stuff, right? The stuff
Right.
that they do, right? They were
Right.
a bookstore.
Yeah.
And that's where they
Literally
were a
how they
bookstore.
started. Yeah.
Yeah, they were a bookstore. So they got so good at building that they got really good at engineering out how the servers and all this stuff. So
Sure.
AWS was the original huge player in the cloud space when you hear people talk about the cloud space. And AWS is a really fascinating one to me because it is so different than anything else that company is listing here. Right? So you got retail sales, which is online stores.
Sure.
Third-party seller services, that's still retail, right? That's
Yeah.
still an e-commerce
Yep.
retail site. Amazon Prime, that's still retail,
Yeah.
right? AWS, that is web server hosting.
Yeah.
So it is a really interesting diversification that they made there, and it's now at 13.2% of their total revenue, which is 469.8 billion is total revenue. So you're talking about what? That's $55 billion.
Yeah, little around there.
Yeah, in AWS space, it's a really that one to me has always been fascinating.
I guess what also kind of surprises me, they have that region split in the top right. I get it. The United States is predominantly where most of the revenue comes from, but to not see more of Europe on there honestly kind of surprises me. I figured more of Europe would be listed other than the UK and Germany, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, and nothing in Africa, South America, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're talking about a number based on a few countries.
that's crazy.
How amazing is that?
And then I'm kind of curious how they lump Twitch into that because Twitch is a service, live service that they provide, and they have to make a lot of money from. So I'm wondering if that's lumped into their web services or in their subscription services.
I would be
Kind of
curious too
curious.
because I think that is what I was seeing if you would maybe draw out of it.
Yeah,
Twitch, as big as it is not listed.
yeah. That is. I am kind of curious to. I wonder if it's too bad they don't let you click on this to break it down more because I am kind of curious
Yeah,
about that. You've got to
yeah, I'm gonna take
figure
that as
that
a.
it's a good chunk, man.
I'm actually gonna write that down. Twitch revenue. I want to know now. I'm curious.
Yeah,
Twitch
and
revenue.
it
All right, we're gonna look at what's next. Apple.
yeah, this next graph does not surprise me. That Apple is. I figured Apple would actually be more of a competitor with Amazon than they appear to be.
Hmm.
But the regional breakdown also doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. Apple's interesting here. I like Apple, right? And some people are like, "Oh, use Android, use Apple." I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
Yeah,
about as a company, this company builds a thing that someone wants, and they either make their money or don't make their money because they succeeded in that thing,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like, there is no third party seller services right in the Apple ecosystem. So,
No,
total revenue 365.8 billion is a little bit outdated number now, but you're talking about all those devices represent enormous gambles. And I think
yeah,
that's an interesting way to look at it because If you look at the iPhone, you look at the iPad, even the Mac to an extent, but definitely wearables. Take the services out of it for a moment. You're talking about the level of gamble is we're going to make 6.9 million iPads
Yeah.
before we've sold one.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And yeah, so you're talking about that's the type of company they have to run, right? Like they're taking a gamble that Amazon doesn't have to take, right? And some of these other
And
companies just don't have to take. And so I
and
have
they're a
enormous
very
respect for,
specific niche product as well on top of that, right?
yeah, they're not Samsung, right? They're not
Yeah.
making televisions. They're not
Yeah.
making, these some of the other, yeah, because you got Samsung listed the primary competitors over on the left. It's just a Apple has always been one that I respect. I think Steve Jobs did a great job. Love or hate the guy, right? He did a great job of the revitalization. I think Tim Cook is doing a really fantastic job operationally because it is a industrial design company at the end of the day. The things they build, um,
I'm also not
because
surprised
they have
by
to build them.
their region split. It's almost 50-50 east and west. That's pretty
Yep.
legit to me. Oh, I didn't really recognize that they actually split the Americas. So
Hmm.
it literally
Hmm.
is west and east hemispheres.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Very. It's interesting if you scroll back up and just look at the revenue by region. Scroll back up to Amazon and you look at 469.8 billion, right?
Yeah,
You look at their revenue by region, right? It's very specific. And you scroll back down to Apple. Apple's making, revenue is
yeah,
less, but they're capitalized in their regions, right? Amazon is
yeah.
still not scratching the surface of these different regions.
And you should look at the net
Fascinating.
income too, because the net income onto Apple is 95 billion, whereas the net income into Amazon is only 33.
Hmm.
Like that's pretty significant. Even though they've got total revenue that's 100 billion higher, they're not making as much money
Yeah,
overall.
Apple is a very interesting company, potentially the greatest company in history, when
Yeah.
you really break it down by economics. So let's look at Alphabet, which is Google. For anyone who unfamiliar, this is where to me these next two I think or the next three are really what I wanted to talk about. This is interesting to me, right? Google makes 69% nice 69% of their
Wow.
revenue is advertising. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about advertising, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of money
Yeah.
tied up in advertising. Is Google without advertising?
The thing is they started out as a search engine by itself, right? But at
Yep.
this point, Google is more of a an entertainment platform, right? Between YouTube, the YouTube Live, the music, Google Music, right? And you could even watch movies through YouTube as well, like actual, movies. You can rent movies. That doesn't
Yep.
surprise me though, because
It
the
does not
amount of
surprise you.
people now, when you consider, I mean, maybe I'm weird, but I spend more time surfing YouTube every day than I do any other media, surfing
So
through videos or whatever the case may be.
so you
I
just like
mean,
you're going on YouTube, you're just cruising around and
yeah, like
now do
before I
you
go to
pay for
bed, I
YouTube?
probably will be on. I have YouTube Prime or YouTube, whatever the hell it's
Mhm.
called, so I don't
Mhm.
get the ads. But like, case in point, there's people watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they may watch the recaps in the evening, and I only say that because a certain short Portuguese lady does this in the evenings, and she's always complaining about the ads. And that's my thing: is if you got a 1 hour long video, and every 20 minutes, 15 minutes, you're getting 2-3 ads. I mean, that's ad revenue hitting them right every single time. If you're not paying for that premium service, so it
Right.
does not
Right.
surprise me at all.
Does not surprise you. So what's interesting here, the thing I was talking about earlier to you, which was the ad networks, right? So what's crazy to me about Google is that the big red bar is actually
Yeah,
ads on their properties.
yeah,
The lighter color is the network, advertising network, right? So this is when um, you go around to websites and they've got,
right.
I want
The
advertising
little
on my
bar or
blog.
whatever.
So yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And so their total ad revenue is
That's
what is that?
ridiculous.
12.3% says at 71.3%, right? Like 71.3% of Google's
That's
revenue
yeah.
comes from advertising. That's
Well, and I
significant.
guess that does make sense because, if you're like me, like I can't stand Microsoft anything. I use Google Chrome, I Google Maps on my phone, Google like everything for me, Gmail, all of it's Google. That makes sense because you're getting all those
Mhm.
ads, and beyond that. So I'm wondering in this advertising, is this data sales too? Your data?
I don't know how that's listed, but yeah, that's a
Because
good
it
call.
because it wouldn't
I
surprise
pro
me if it
I
is.
will tell you, I think I mentioned I spent some time in the ad industry. What I will tell you is Facebook and Google differentiate themselves by saying I can target using that data. So,
Ah,
meaning I can sell my ads for more money
right.
because I can promise the advertiser that I am actually targeting people who are 35 and up and interested in import cars.
That kind of stuff makes me nervous because
It should. It should.
I mean but the thing is you can't get nervous about it. You can't because you're not going to stop it unless you
You
live
can't dodge
in
it.
an area like the EU where they have heavy laws preventing it. Like here in the US, I mean, I hate to say it, you're screwed. If you think for 1 minute that you're able to get off the grid, well, I suggest you start building that bomb shelter and putting tinfoil on your head because it ain't
Yep. Well,
you're not
scroll
going
down to the
to.
last one. Yeah,
Yeah.
scroll down to Facebook here because you're bringing up a great
Yep.
point, and we can skip Microsoft, right? But you can
Okay.
get down to Meta here, which you mean Facebook, right?
Yep.
Meta or whatever Zuckerberg decides to call it tomorrow. But
Dude.
the interesting thing here is something you just said, right? Because I've told you what I do. I'm in the industry I'm in.
Yep.
When when Apple decides to say you can no longer spy on people through our device, Facebook loses their mind.
Yep.
Now you see why.
Yeah.
Facebook
Ninety-seven
is
and a half percent.
That is amazing to me. In other words, in my opinion, right? Look, I'm not a big Facebook fan, but in other words, they do literally nothing of value for their users
Yeah.
that a user is willing to pay for.
Yeah.
Now, Facebook has made amazing amounts of connections. It lets people keep up with their families remotely. We all know this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you pay for it? That is what I
Would
wanted to ask.
would I
Yeah,
pay
like would
for
you
the
pay for
service?
Facebook? Yeah.
The only way that I'd be okay with that is if you guaranteed me that I could completely shut off all the BS data grabbing. That'd be the only way that I'd pay for it.
Okay, great. So now it's just a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So so this one to me is the kind of most interesting one, right? And this is one of the last things we're going to talk about. So another 5 minutes or so on this, but this one to me is the one that I find fascinating because there's no business model.
Yeah.
There's literally not a business model
Well,
here.
technically there is a business model. It's just
Not when you created the company.
sure.
That's what's
Sure.
fascinating to me,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they found out ads and everyone else. Let me say, I'm gonna say this kind of openly. Facebook figured this pattern out, right? I can get a bunch of people using it, and then I can advertise to them.
Yeah.
And all these other sites have followed suit. And so we've given up in a lot of ways. How many new models have there been on the internet to make money
Yeah.
in the past 10 years?
Yeah.
Right. So the ubiquity of this like insane advertising spin, my God, 97.5%. Why would you try anything different?
And this also explains, I mean, if you're watching, a lot of the reason why Mike Zuckerberg is fighting Congress, case in point,
Sure.
to keep it from getting controlled because he knows that his business is literally on the line. It's not just
Yep.
I mean, it's not just Facebook. I mean, you see down at the bottom there, it's Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. I mean, I can't remember whether Facebook owns TikTok or not. I don't. TikTok's a Chinese
No, TikTok's
subsidiary, I
separate. It's Facebook
believe.
Messenger though.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean that's 2.9 billion, 2 billion, 1.5 billion. That's a lot right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah, I think
lot
this
of
one's
money on the
really
line.
interesting. Scroll back up to Microsoft real quick, so just we can cover it. Because I think Microsoft is I would hold Microsoft and Apple up as the example of, if I were to kind of write down what an ideal tech company should look
They're
like,
diversified.
it would it would diversified, right? It would be
Yeah,
one of those two. And
yeah,
you look at Microsoft, and it's really hard to find a flaw or a
yeah.
weakness. Let's say you were a competitor. Let's say you wanted to be a competitor to Microsoft. How do you attack this company? You can't,
You can't.
right?
Yeah,
You can't. Now you look at Facebook, that becomes really easy, right? It's
yeah, yeah.
ripe for some sort of disruption.
Sure.
But Microsoft, this one is fascinating. How familiar are you with Microsoft Azure? Because I want to call this out.
Azure, no, I don't.
Not
Well,
at all.
I mean, I
Okay.
know what it is, but I don't know anything about it specifically.
So Azure is the same thing in Microsoft land as AWS is for Amazon, right?
Oh, okay.
Look at the difference here,
Yeah,
right?
that's
They
a
went
third of
hard in
their
the paint
income.
on AWS. Right. They went hard in the paint on that, and it's become a huge part of their business.
Yeah.
So this to me is a really, Microsoft is love or hate them, a really fantastic example of, if you were going to be smart about having your business, your huge tech company, be insurmountable.
Right.
This is the one that I would say is doing a good job of it. As well as I would say, if I were going to invest in one of these five, that's the least volatile.
I mean, so how long has Facebook been around? How long has Facebook been a thing?
Yeah, it's been a thing a lot longer, but 2005 um,
So
is
about
when the
17
ubiquity began.
years ish.
Yeah.
Microsoft's been around a lot longer than that. A lot longer.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
when you look at a company as solid, I mean, for all the crap we give Microsoft for all the Windows updates and issues that they create and everything, I mean, you're 100% correct. Like this is you won't see people going to Congress and sitting in front of a committee trying to explain their business model because this is pretty rock solid, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you take a slice of it of 9.1% in gaming. That's gonna get bigger, right?
they're
They're making
working on it.
acquisitions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm
you've had a
this
couple
one
of
was just really
big
impressive.
studios get bought out by Microsoft recently too.
Yep. So this one to me
Yeah.
was a really impressive one. Anyway, thank you for entertaining me. That was a subject I threw on there. I
No,
appreciate
that's
you talking through it with me.
crazy.
Love your viewpoints and all this stuff, and the advertising stuff, man. I think long arc, as we're
That's
talking about
just
stuff, you'll hear me gripe about
crazy.
that because
Yeah.
I, you built a company that's 97.5% advertising, and now you're addicted to a model that isn't sustainable.
Yeah. I mean,
My kids aren't going to put up with that.
I guess
There's a
my question
generation
that
coming who's
scares
not going to put up
me,
with that.
the thing that scares me about this model though is you say that, but if it doesn't change, if legally it doesn't change, it's going to be there. You know what I mean?
Well, I will say it this way: kids move too quickly,
Sure.
right? So if your walled garden is advertised in network, right, which is what this is, um, and the kids are like, "I'm going to TikTok,"
Yeah.
because that's cooler than this,
Yeah.
you're screwed.
Yeah.
Now TikTok has 97.5% of their revenue in advertising. And it's the exact same human beings,
And it just shifts
right?
from
And
company to company to
and they just
company.
move from one to the next one. Yep.
And I mean, Rita says it perfectly in chat. She said, uh, "Any of the pages such as Facebook is free. You're the product." That's 100% what it is.
You're the product. Yeah, you're the product.
That
And
there's a reason why Facebook spends 97.5% on advertising because you are the product they're farming. 100%,
yep.
hands down. Yeah.
And some of the behaviors they've engaged in to that extent have been beyond shady. We'll save it for another day.
Yeah.
But some of the experimentation and behaviors they've engaged in, because they're trying to figure out how they can control humans,
Yeah.
and the advertising the way they make money on advertising is impressions. How many ads did you see?
Yeah.
All right. How many ads can I show you at once? One or two. So, to raise my income, what do? I find a way to make you see more. How do I do that? Make you stay on the site as long as possible
Yep.
and do things on the site. So, the behaviors you kind of end up engaging in are meant to be addictive, right? And there's
Yeah.
a whole philosophical conversation to have. Is it tobacco 2.0? Potentially, right? Like, there's all
Right.
these things to be talking about. And it may be at some point in the future. Spoiler alert, maybe we'll get into that and dig into it. And maybe I can get you someone with the qualifications to actually have an educated conversation on that. It ain't
I'm
me.
trying to think of the name of the movie recently. This is it. It personifies perfectly. There's an end of the world movie that has Leonardo DiCaprio in it, Jennifer Lawrence, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head and can't find it. I just found it actually. I just, of course, don't look up. Have you seen that movie?
I have not seen that yet. I have not.
Let me go back
Worth
to the
watching?
speaker scene. You need to watch it. I know you for a fact. You're going to laugh a lot because of the things that we talked about tonight. Don't
Uh-huh.
look up. If you haven't watched it, it is satirical, but on a level of scary that I don't
Okay.
know that people recognize. Because in there, they have a tech company that is it's Facebook essentially. If you look at it, it's Facebook, where people are getting ads for things before they even like went to look for said thing.
Yeah.
And what it
Yeah.
is there's an algorithm that foresees what you're going to want, so it actually shows you the advertisement for something you want before you even want it. And essentially
Yeah.
that's what it is. And it's an end of the world movie, but it's hilarious because it's like Idiocracy. You and I have talked about that movie too.
It's a little on the nose.
Yeah, Idiocracy isn't a comedy. It's a freaking, like
It's a
foretelling of the
documentary.
future. Yeah, it's a
Right.
documentary. Like, and this
Um,
movie is exactly the same. If you
is it
haven't seen it,
Netflix?
it's on Netflix. It's
Netflix?
on
Or yeah,
there.
I'll go. I might watch it. I may watch it tonight.
I
So yeah,
want to
I
hear your thoughts, even if it's late. If you watch it tonight, you and your
okay.
wife,
All
I
right.
think, will laugh a lot. Like it's
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
that
I
movie
want
actually
to. So,
legitimately kind of scared me a little bit because I mean, it's comedy at the end of the day, but it legitimately shows sheep, like the sheeple mentality
yeah,
that is out there.
there's some good.
So
Netflix has done a decent job with some good documentaries
yeah,
in and around like the bad behaviors of social media,
yeah,
the Cambridge Analytica stuff. Which, oh my gosh, if you've never watched
yeah,
it, these things
yeah,
are incredibly powerful. And at least in the case of Cambridge Analytica, the way they were using the algorithms. And so what happens is these advertising algorithms, these algorithms, they're machine learning. And what's
yeah,
interesting about machine learning, you hear it, people talk about artificial intelligence and all this stuff. It's really, let's break it down to something really simple for everyone to understand. It's pattern recognition. That is
yeah,
it. And so
100%.
what the machines are doing is using a model to learn patterns and respond to them. And that's it. And so you've got a bunch of people out there, whenever a company like Google, right, with YouTube or Facebook with advertising, they go to use or Twitter, right? They go to use an algorithm. There's human beings out there that are like, I want to figure out the algorithm and figure out how
Yeah,
I can make money by not doing a lot of work through the algorithm. And they consistently figure it out. And so Facebooks and all these people, they're fighting against that all the time. And honestly, there's only so much you can fight because the algorithm is going
yeah,
to do what it's going to do.
yeah,
Um, and it'll adjust on its own. And the problem that they've run into in the case of Facebook is they're scared of adjusting the algorithm, right? Because it's so fragile now. Their business model is so fragile, right? Like if they adjust it and it breaks,
oh
they
my
all just go
gosh,
home.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
They become victims of this algorithm. And I want to answer actually John Perez's question or take a shot at it. But there's one I want to tell you about. There's a great story coming out of Google. They were doing some of their labs stuff, which is one of the greatest things Google's ever brought to the earth, right? Which is where they have their employees, they spend 10% of their time doing whatever they want to do. They
right,
make some amazing stuff. It's where we got
yeah,
things like, Google Chat, Gmail. We get these
yeah,
things from that.
yeah,
And there's this story where, and I don't know if it's true, right? I cannot sign off. I was not there. I cannot sign that it was true, but it is in the mythos of the technical world where a bunch of engineers at Google were trying to make a better translation engine, right? And what I mean by
okay,
translation is natural language translation, right? English to Japanese to whatever,
right,
right? So Spanish. And so one of the issues when you're doing these like big complex translations is you have to have a source language that everyone understands. So an example, if it were me and you, and we were going to say we're going to offer a translation service, we would first translate everything to English,
right,
right? Then we would translate out. So there's going to be something lost in that translation.
sure.
And so Google sat down and said, hey, what if we taught AI to figure out how to best handle this, right? Because it sounds like a
Oh
really good
Lord,
candidate, right, for figuring this out. And they started this thing up. and they were like, "Wow, look at it go!" You know, it's taking everything and it's taking. Oh my gosh, I've got this in Korean. You know, I'm gonna change Mandarin, right? And I'm gonna translate it to English and Mandarin. Well, what happened was the machines figured out that that was inefficient, right? Because that's a human thing, right? So the machines were like, you know, this is stupid, man. This is a very inefficient thing. We're converting to English first, and then English is just a weird language, and then things get lost. It's inaccurate.
Yeah, yeah,
It's slow, right? This is not the best way to do it. The machines, right? The machine learning said, I'm going to invent my own language, which is incredibly efficient. Here's the problem. No one knew at that point what the machines were saying to each other.
yeah.
And so the algorithm had now said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the language I'm going to have. And of course, the Google engineers did the only way to solve that problem is to unplug the damn thing, right? So they were like,
Do, do, do,
yeah.
do.
So yeah, but thank you for entertaining me on
Yeah,
the
no.
five companies. John's question is which of the five are the most fragile with respect to competition in terms of their structure? And I would tell you it's Facebook and Google. And
Yeah,
you don't like to hear that. You like to think Google and Facebook are these juggernauts that can't be disrupted. They are literally the only way of they avoid disruption is by buying competition.
yeah,
Right? That is now their business model. There's a reason Facebook owns Instagram. Right? There's a reason that they own
yeah.
these things because those were the companies that were going to disrupt them. So if you have a model where you look at your revenue and it's one bar all the way around, you don't have a solid
That's
model.
scary. You do not put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, that's business 101, right? Like you don't do
Yep.
that. And and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't remember if it's WhatsApp. I think it was WhatsApp was coming up as a huge competitor to Facebook cuz WhatsApp
Yep.
has their own version of Facebook, but it's only in South America and I think China, and I might be able to be corrected on that, but I'm pretty positive Facebook bought that out to get rid of
Mhm.
it because they were scared of that competition. So
Well, there's an entire behavior occurring industry wide right now in the technology industry where instead of innovating, you buy competition and kill. And what is happening there is these companies have gotten so big
yeah,
that they can acquire any company.
Jesus,
And so they go in and they acquire a company, and instead of creating new product, they kill it. And so some of your favorite things will get killed because they were a better
yeah,
product. And
yeah,
so there is at some point, I don't, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, there is some point where there is monopolistic behavior occurring
right,
in some of these realms, right? And monopolistic behavior is just not healthy for any society.
right.
So how we figure that out, I don't know, but it is a really interesting thing to find that these companies got so big that they are anti-competitive, right? That is by definition anti-competitive. I buy you,
100%.
kill your
Yeah,
company,
yeah.
right? So yeah, it's an interesting space, and I
Scary.
appreciate I appreciate you bearing with me and having the conversation with me. That's my geek spot, as you might have been able to tell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's good. I here we are. So you and I said 2 hours max, an hour to an hour and a half is what we were looking at. We are at actually almost 2 hours, so I think we're doing good. I think we're just
Yep.
fine. As pilot shows go, I think we did okay. I believe everything is going to be okay. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned before we sign off, though, is that if you're watching, whether that's the VOD or you guys are watching live, please in chat put constructive feedback. Would love to see it. Love to hear it. I know Seven wrote down some notes along the way. I've written a couple down for things to improve or look at in the future. One of the things I do have to you have to forgive us for the quality of the video is only at 720p. I did notice there's a little bit of quality loss there. That's because he and I are babies when it comes to YouTube. So we're not part of the cool kid crowd yet.
We're not cool enough yet.
Yeah, but I have been recording this, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to clean it up, strip the audio, probably put it up to Google or all the outlets that we said were scary, maybe.
Yeah, get some advertising running
Get some
against it.
advertising there. You never know. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what people think. Hopefully, we'll get some constructive feedback, and we'll see how it goes. What do you think? How do you think so far, or what do you think so far? I should say.
I had a lot of fun. It was a great way to spend a Friday evening. Always chatting with you. Always
Yeah.
enjoy having a conversation with you. I do feel like it was a really cool time to sit down and I learned more about you. Right? Like I think that was some of my favorite stuff is finding out some of the stories you had about your gear behind you is like really cool, man. So it's Appreciate you sharing all that. Also, I thought the subjects were fun.
Yeah,
I thought that there's some good conversation there. I would like to keep doing some of the things where you geek out about something, ask what I think about it. I geek out about something and ask what you think about it, because the diversity of viewpoint is what makes us better humans, right? And so
totally.
I'm really curious about some of those things. Loved your feedback on Elon, right? I think that's going to be fun to watch. I plan on you. We could probably keep this on every
Oh,
every
totally.
time.
Yeah,
Looks like
yeah.
this one's gonna keep going, right?
It's gonna be going
But
for a
yeah, man,
while.
I had a lot of fun. I had a
Yeah.
whole lot of fun, and hope to do it again soon.
Same. Definitely appreciate the back and forth. I mean, that was one of the driving reasons why you and I decided to do this. Was like you said, the conversations we have are freaking awesome. So I'm just excited to see where this could go, and eventually, hopefully, we can get some more people on the be online with us in a call and see what kind of shenanigans we can get into.
I imagine there's some out there.
So as for frequency, guys, I Seven and I talked about it. Probably do maybe one every other week. We may talk and change things as they may be. If that's the case, it wouldn't be next Friday, but the following Friday. Next Friday, we're going to be in Baton Rouge at the USS Kidd Veterans Museum. Anyway, would love to
Come
see
see
you all
us.
there. Definitely come see us. Come meet us. Would love to chat and enjoy a beautiful town. Baton Rouge is gorgeous. I loved it there when I went there actually 2 years ago now. Good Lord. But yeah, so hopefully in 2 weeks we'll see you guys again back on this channel. Hopefully this takes off. I would love to see it go places, and who knows, maybe we'll be the next Doctor Disrespect. I don't know. Probably
I
not.
I've seen your hair. We're both we're
I
both
need to get
wearing
the
hats.
mustache.
Yeah, yeah. We're both wearing hats, and what I will say is, if there is going to be a mullet, it will be yours.
It
So
is
if you're
100% going to
signing
be
up,
mine. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you're signing up for it,
It's going to be a party in the back, man, you know? With that, I think we'll call it a night as we're getting a little bit out there. Love the hell out of
what
you
mullets
guys.
mullets were the limit, really?
That's it. I draw the line.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Draw
all
the
I
line
got.
at mullet. Okay, I'm actually gonna write that down. We draw the line at mullet. I think
At
that's
bullet.
that's
That's how
actually
we need to end
the
every
best.
single stream. You know how it used to be like, don't forget to spay or neuter your pets. This is grow your mullet, and then
Yeah,
that's
no,
it.
we draw the line at mullet, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyways, guys, hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care of each other and enjoy your weekends.
Bye, everybody.